personally authorized by you. The board of directors will crucify you.
Welcome, guys. This is James Carner, and with me is Urban, my man Josh. And tonight's episode, we're going to call it The Source, okay? Now, tonight is not a show built on reaction. It is a show built on record. And what sits in front of us is not one book, not one author, not one claim, but a chain of writings that stretch across centuries, languages, religions, and political systems. Names like Barruel, Robison, Webster, Ford, Noblitt, Sombart, Guénon, Mullins, Daniel, Herzl, Hoffman, Springmeier, even Karl Marx, all voices that did not know each other, did not live in the same eras, and did not share the same beliefs. Yet all attempted to explain the same question: who or what shapes the movements of history behind what we can see? Now, this is where most conversations stop too early. Okay, people are handed conclusions without being shown the path that led to them. They are told what to believe about secret societies, power structures, revolutions, religions, and identity, but they are rarely shown how each author arrived at those conclusions, what sources they used, and whether those sources were firsthand, secondhand, or inherited from someone before them. Now, over time, repetition begins to feel like confirmation, and narratives that were once speculation begin to be treated as established fact. So tonight, the approach is very simple and it's disciplined. Every source is placed on the table, not to defend it, not to attack it, but to examine it, line by line if necessary. Who wrote it? When was it written? What evidence was actually said and being used? Whether the claims were built on documents, observations, theology, philosophy, or the interpretation of someone else's work. This is not about dismissing patterns. It is about testing them. And if it's true, then the truth shouldn't hide or worry about lies. Because if there is truth in any of this, it will hold up under scrutiny. It will not need emotion to back it up. And if parts of the narrative do not hold, then removing them does not weaken the search, it strengthens it. It clears the noise so what remains can be seen clearly. Now, what you are about to hear is not a lecture. It is a process. Two people walking through the material in real time, asking the same question over and over again. What is actually documented and what has been repeated until it sounds true? Well, by the end of this, the goal is not to tell you what to think, but to show you how to see. Guys, welcome my good friend Josh Urban Odyssey to the show. Josh, where are you?
Oh, here I come. Oh, there we go. One moment.
He was here.
I was here.
And I'm like, I was
Oh,
hoping you'd be there when I was talking, but
that was a little anticlimactic here. You know how
technical
it goes.
difficulties, folks. Well, at least we can hear you.
Yeah. One moment.
Well, he was live earlier. We did a test, I
Yeah,
swear.
we did.
He was here. But that's how it is. The thing is you guys know every time I come to the truth, man, something
There.
happens technically and we.
1 second. Let me get it sorted out.
Yeah, yeah, all good. So, what we're going to be talking about tonight, guys, is a host of authors and a host of books. I've had many people send me books to take a look at and to go through and to peruse and either dissect and look, there he is, for the sources. And what we've been able to come up with when I was speaking with Urban yesterday is we took all of our sources and we pulled it together. And we're going to talk about our sources, if they're legit, if they're not, and if they have anything that they have that has actual backed up evidence that we can use. Because the more evidence we have, the better we can fight the system if there is one. Josh, welcome to the show. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad that we were able to do this because I was kind of teasing it to certain people who said that they liked the content. Also, your Bloodline series that's been going on Odyssey over the past probably week or two because I've done it,
Thank you.
one per day. People are really getting into that. I've been sharing a lot of the stuff that you've been doing and then covering the show. We wanted to put something together, and this was a perfect show to do.
Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate your help. And guys, if you don't know Josh, I call him Josh, but his show name is Urban, and Urban Odyssey has been taken off, dude. His show is just it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I couldn't be any more proud. Josh has always helped me with a lot of technical difficulties here. When I first was introduced to Josh, he was a fan of my earlier works when I was on TikTok. I think that's how we met.
I think it
And then
was.
from Yeah, and then from there, we started collaborating back and forth. He started helping me out with my show, and I let me be honest with all of you. Josh is the one who helped me become a better researcher. I'm not even joking. If it wasn't for Josh, I wouldn't be at the area of where I am in discernment. And Josh, I give all that thanks to you, my friend.
Well, I'm glad that I was able to impart that on you. That's really all I seek to do. Even if I just help somebody learn one or two new things, I consider that worth it. You don't have to necessarily think what I think, but as long as I help you learn something that betters you, I'll have done what I've done.
Absolutely. And you've been doing research on the esoteric thing. You've been doing more research on that. I've been kind of doing other things, but I've been kind of, keeping the esoteric along with it, but
Mhm.
trying to expose it, looking at it through a biblical point of view. Can you tell us a little bit about what you work on your show and what your show is all about, and also give it a plug?
Yeah, so I'm primarily on Substack, but I'm on pretty much every platform. It's theofficialurban.substack.com. That's my main link. But the primary part of my show that I've been trying to do lately is helping people to understand words and terms and the linguistics behind everything. So tonight you're actually going to see a bit of that because the texts that we're going to talk about tonight kind of fall under the genre of it's called occult ponerology. Now that's a ponerology is technically the study of evil,
Mm,
how evil presents, and so occult being hidden.
hmm
So that's what these are all about. The elite hidden circles of evil that are unfortunately in some position of power. Unfortunately, they have a little bit of money on their side, but the study of how this charts through history, because what you'll find is that the same cycles will repeat, the same names pop up, the same
hmm
locations pop up, and of course the same bloodlines always pop up.
Right. And evil is really good at secrecy. And secrecy is the hardest thing to uncover because, well, when you keep a secret, you won't know about it. And what we've learned throughout the course of my work is that a human being can keep a secret for 2 years. That's the average that a human being can keep a secret before it finally comes out. The military industrial complex, or we call the Department of War, has perfected that to 20 years. And so that's all we have as data for now. We don't know if the military has been able to keep secrets even longer than that. But secrets is the issue here. And on top of that, it is who runs the world. And all we've been seeing on TikTok is anti-Semitism, blame, point fingers. It's the Jews. It's the Jews. The Jews run the world, and we need to expose the Jews. Well, as we've been doing our research, Josh and I, over these few years that since I've known him, we've been finding that they want us to say this stuff. They want us to point the fingers at them. And the actual culprits, it doesn't point to just the Jews alone. And it doesn't even give us a real good history of where they came from. You see, I dissected the show Fall of the Cabal, and I compared it to all the esoteric work that I've done. And what I found out was there was a lot of missing links and a lot of information that was what I would say construed and taken far away from the truth. And so the truth is what I'm after, and I know the truth is what Josh is after. And tonight we're going to show you all of the evidence, all of the books that we have had, and we're going to compare it. And we're going to basically talk about every single book that we've read and basically talk about the author and what they were trying to accomplish. And on top of that, did they have the correct sources? So Josh, take it away.
Yeah, and I just want to say really quick, you kind of took that in the best direction possible, because it is secrecy and truth. Those are the enemy. You know, secrecy is the enemy because it enslaves you. No matter
Right.
what, even if you don't want to get into anything beyond that, secrets will always act as chains, and that's why the truth makes you free. And you know,
The
as you
truth
say,
makes you free. Thank you for saying make.
well, the
I
words are
love it.
important. Yeah. And so make versus set, you know, if you're made free permanently, you can't be caught again. But if you're set free, you know,
Exactly.
there's that chance under the little linguistic magic that you're going to be caught again. And that's how you will be caught again, is through the language. But
Right.
it is the secrecy. And so that is what these groups have in common. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be a specific race, culture, creed, anything. But if you're going to act like you're one thing outwardly and then be a liar and do something darker behind the scenes and keep secrets about it, that just
Mm-hmm.
turns anybody evil. Anybody.
Well, when I read Mein Kampf, I was under the impression that, you know, it was Hitler angry at the Jews. And when I got more deep into it and understood it, he was actually going after the bankers. Okay. But then out of the blue, it turned from going after the bankers, the international bankers, right, who held Germany through blackmail because they owed so much interest. It turned into a hate of a race. And that's something I want to address. Guys, we're not here to hate races. We're not here to be anti-Semitic at all. We're not here to put blame or point fingers at a race or creed or color or whatever. What we're trying to do is find the truth. Who are the real dynasties that have been in control, and what is their goal in the end? And eventually, we should be able to all come to a real simple conclusion, is that it's so chaotic. You can't just point it down to just one family. It's a multiple chaotic world of families fighting against each other, and it has nothing to do with Judaism. It has nothing to do with Christianity. It has nothing to do with Buddhism or any other religion at all. What it has to do is point blank mammon. Mammon. The love of money is the root of all evil. Josh, take it away.
Absolutely. Yeah, with that I'm going to fire this up. So let me go ahead and bring my
Yeah, we're going
presentation
to give
up.
you guys a PowerPoint presentation, and then you're going to see that, and then we're going to just basically walk through each
Yeah,
of
and
the sources.
for the audience, I already put it in the description. So if you look at the description on pretty much any platform you're on, you'll see a link to the slideshow. So because there are links and stuff, I provided a lot of links and stuff for people who would like any of these sources. So to begin, those links are right here. some research drives, and also some links to Webster's 1828, 1913 dictionaries. Those are free online. I use those a lot, and those are a great habit to build. If you haven't gotten into that habit, I really suggest just pulling it out. Even every day, if there's a word that I hear in a video or there's something I read, I like to make a habit of learning the context, especially, from 100 or 2 years ago,
Right.
because you'll find a lot of different stuff. And for the sake of just presenting this to you in a single show tonight, we're going to take the most primary sources in the little first half that I do. Most of the people and sources that I'm going to talk about are single authors who have authored a handful of sources that I've enjoyed, found very informative. But there are some, that have one or two because they're very important. With that, starting occult ponerology. I'll read this definition to get us started. Occult ponerology, within the directory that I'm putting together of these terms of human husbandry, occult ponerology is defined as the scientific study, systematization, and application of spiritual, psychological, and institutional evil by a hidden elite to subjugate the human race. It reveals that the degradation of society is not organic, but the result of a meticulously engineered, multi-generational alchemical formula driven by a Luciferian cryptocracy. Occult ponerology demonstrates that what the profane masses perceive as random acts of cruelty, political corruption, or moral decay are actually the manifestations of a highly organized, quote-unquote, great work. This dark science operates on 4 distinct but interwoven vectors, that being the psychological, the societal, the institutional, and the spiritual. And that's what all of these sources are about. They fall into this category here. And so that's kind of why I decided to start with that. The very first source, probably one that's been the most instrumental and has got some age. It was published at the beginning of the 20th century by Edith Starr Miller, also known as Lady Queensborough. She was married into a whatever they call it, a noble house. And so she did take that title, and she wrote these texts, 2 volumes, Occult Theocracy. And that there is a link here right here. If anybody views it and clicks it, you can read those. This is about 800 pages long, and it takes you through a whole timeline, all the way back to ancient Egypt, the Pharisees, the Sadducees. It goes all the way from the beginning and takes you forward until the mystery schools. Now, the first half of the book is a little bit more sparse. The time gaps are a little bit larger, but the second half of the book pretty much consists of the last 2 centuries. And it talks about as many of these random mystery groups, Scottish Rite, Palladian Rite. You got stuff like even the United Nations is mentioned in there, because these are all groups fundamentally built on secrecy, and that's kind of what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
So I'll read here on occult theocracy. This is a quick honorable mention. This text is one of the most important texts ever. Occult theocracy gives a concrete timeline of the mystery schools from Egypt till the early 20th century when the book was written. It serves as a type of encyclopedia of groups and brotherhoods. And my belief, kind of having started with this, is you can't really study this completely without having a copy of this on hand. It's a very good foundation. So that's the first mention. The second is Fritz Springmeier, who is very well known. Fritz Springmeier was doing this work in the 90s. He was a graduate of, I think he went to, I can't remember, it was one of the military academies, the prestigious military academies. And after he kind of had the run-in experience with I guess you could say disciplined and hard-lined, and the people who are there, he kind of came out, decided necessarily he didn't want to go into that career line. And so he started on a mission from God. This is his word. He is a Christian, and he said that his conviction, that his mission in his work was to help people who were under the throes of what he later called MK Ultra Monarch, trauma-based mind control, dissociative personalities,
Mm-hmm.
trauma program multiples, etc. He started working with them and to expose evil and the Illuminati. Those are his missions. So I will go ahead and read this little section here. Fritz Springmeier spent most of the 90s by working with SRA, or trauma-based mind controls, satanic ritual abuse,
Satanic ritual abuse, yeah.
survivors, in attempt to deprogram them. And it was from this he was able to write his books, most of which are very widely known. In 2003, the Illuminati researcher Fritz Springmeier was sentenced to 111 months in prison on the basis of no real evidence. His experience suggests that any time the Illuminati can put somebody away who irritates them, and they
Mm-hmm.
can. Springmeier was convicted because a bank robber, whose name was Forrest E. Bateman Jr., testified that Springmeier visited his house on the same day as Bateman discussed the robbery with two accomplices. So this guy, Bateman, had discussed a robbery, and Fritz Springmeier was there at the wrong time, basically. This is the official story. And
Mm-hmm.
so he served some time in prison, and this was a widely kind of followed thing at the time. And so this article, you can't see it here. I do have a link to an article if you want to know more about the arrest and how all that happened. But his primary text, there's quite a
Here they
few
are,
of
yeah.
them. Yeah, you have Bloodlines of the Illuminati,
Mm-hmm. Which is on the
Watchtower.
CIA website, by the way.
Yes, it was apparently found in Osama bin Laden's compound. So
What?
it's very
Osama
interesting.
bin Laden had Fritz Springmeier's book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, and so that one's probably the most widely known. The Watchtower and the Masons, that talks about the Watchtower Society, like the Russell clan. They were one of the bloodlines. The Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have the Russell Trust, which is Skull and Bones.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another one I can't remember, but the Watchtower and the Masons with the crown and cross symbol. Probably the one that I found the most influential from Fritz Springmeier is the how the Illuminati create an undetectable total mind control slave. It is probably the only information that has any real slight accuracy, because it is a private citizen who wrote this manual based on his time working in deprogramming survivors of ritual abuse. And so he compiled this information and wrote this almost manual to how they did this program. Now, the information is a bit dated, and it's obviously from a standpoint of somebody who, is perceiving and viewing this, but it's the only information that is worth referencing on MK Ultra if you want to know the specifics. So Fritz did give a couple interviews recently, but he's pretty happy. He's got stuff that he's doing now. He's kind of keeping his head down. I think he really has done a lot, and he's to be commended for that. There's also the book Be Wise as Serpents and a deeper insight to the Illuminati formula. There's a link there for those there, but you can't see it. Next is Eustace Mullins. Now, he is a very interesting individual. He lived from 1923 to 2010. He's passed away now. Eustace Mullins was the last living protege of a guy named Ezra Pound, the author of the only book burned in Germany since Hitler, a burning under the direction of Americans, and a former researcher for McCarthy. And this is a quote from a biography that I found. Eustace Mullins served 38 months in the United States Army Air Force during World War II. Following his military service, he pursued higher education at Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia. Mullins, a native of Virginia, also attended New York University. And he's written a handful of books. I'll read this because he's pretty important. In 1949, Eustace Mullins was directed by Ezra Pound, who was Ezra Pound was a kind of a political, he was in jail, he was a political prisoner, and people kind of followed him. And so Eustace Mullins was directed by Ezra Pound to investigate the origins and control of the Federal Reserve System. He wrote the Secrets of the Federal Reserve book. Working as a researcher at the Library of Congress, Mullins systematically examined primary sources from about 1910 to 1913 to trace the system's operational structure. This archival effort revealed a secretive 1910 planning session on Jekyll Island in Georgia, organized by Senator Nelson W. Aldrich and prominent private bankers. Mullins concluded that this process, heavily influenced by private financial interests, shaped the 1913 Federal Reserve Act, enabling fiat currency and mechanisms of elite economic dominance, and that's pretty much been proven true.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are the texts that he's authored. This is not all of them. He did author a lot of articles and stuff like that. There's a link to those, but these are the main ones that are like the largest ones. Those are The Secret of the Federal Reserve. There was a sequel to that deals with the City of London connections. He did The New World Order, Our Secret Rulers. He did Mullins' New History of the Jews. And he did The Curse of Canaan, a demonology of history is the title of that text. Next
Good
up,
info,
we
man.
have, yeah, thank you, Nesta Webster. Now, Nesta Webster is very influential in information because she authored The Secret Societies and Subversive Movements in a text called The World Revolution, The Plot Against Civilization. So I'll read. It says, born into a banking family as the youngest daughter of Robert Cooper Lee Bevan, Webster initially pursued historical fiction and biographies before shifting to nonfiction analysis of political conspiracies following World War I. She was influenced by events like the Bolshevik Revolution. Her seminal works including The World Revolution, The Plot Against Civilization, and Secret Societies and Subversive Movements. Those were meticulously documented connections between the groups such as the Illuminati, Freemasons, Jacobins, positing an occult-driven agenda for global disorder rather than spontaneous popular uprisings. Real quick, I'll just go back, but this is the chart that she had drafted out. There are two links here. You can access the images. Some of them are better. You can make out better than others. I'm working on getting higher quality writing. That's a little hard, but these are pretty high quality, and these are hugely advanced charts. But her books that she's written a couple: Secret Societies and Subversive Movements, The World Revolution. She did Behind the World Revolution, another one on the French Revolution. She did one that I didn't picture here on Marie Antoinette. And then she did one that was under a pen name, but it's titled The Secrets of the Zodiac.
Hardest
and that's
one to find.
Interesting. It's well, I do have a copy of it. It is it's almost like an allegory laid out that she was trying to convey a message, but she was trying to use seemingly the old occult system of using these mythologies to convey the message is how I interpret it.
Yeah.
In that chart, it's very detailed, but she lived kind of in the heart of it. So she was witnessing this unfold. She had time on her hands, and she was a pretty talented writer. So she's got a lot of very good books that are well put together. Now these two books are perhaps the most kind of hidden. The second book, The Grand Design Exposed, was hard to find. I didn't even know it existed for a while. John Daniel is the author. There's not much really known about him. I couldn't find any concrete information on him. There were apparently some interviews given, because I've heard Eustace Mullins reference as much. You would say, oh, I heard you interviewed this guy. I can't find them, though. So he's a bit of a ghost. But The Scarlet and the Beast is the first one, and it discusses the red team versus the blue team. Now, that is not in America. That's the red team in England, the British Freemasonry, red, and then French Freemasonry, blue. And my kind of way of looking at this is that this was the fundamental division. This is your two people competing within this system, because they do have fault lines, and they see it as a necessary part of it. They need the interaction between the two sides.
Yeah, divide and conquer.
Yeah, you can't have a WWE wrestling show without a guy on one side and a guy on the other. You need to have a natural kind of fight or
Like
play
the
off.
Welfs and the Ghibellines.
Absolutely, perfectly put. And the Grand Design Expose goes into the connections between the Jacobins and the Jesuits and Freemasonry. So these are very good books. There's a link to those as well. Next, we've got a newer author that most probably haven't seen, but he's done a series called Ordo Abkeo. Guy's name is David Livingston, and this is directly from his website. He says, quote, "I'm an independent researcher, and my work represents the culmination of nearly 35 years of study. When I attended the Liberal Arts College of Concordia University in Montreal, I read William H. McNeill's The History of Western Civilization, which mentions the appearance of the so-called Indo-Europeans who emerged suddenly out of the Caucasus
Caucus.
and conquered the known parts of the world. The story seems strange to me. Most nations emerge gradually when they turn to agriculture. These Indo-Europeans had no prior presence in history and burst out of nowhere and supposedly mastered the chariot, though they came from a mountainous region." And that was from his about page. There's more, but I'm just going to read that because it gives you a little bit of a start. Now, he's
Right, but that's
done.
the same story from all of the other ones, all throughout history, where these people came from. And
Yes.
that's just not one. He's following the same information that we've been uncovering over and over and over again. We'll be talking about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to let people know that this is not, I'm not just looking at newer information because I understand completely fairly. People would say, "Oh, it's brand new, you can't trust it," but that's why I've started collecting information, particularly from before the internet, as old as I can get, because I fear that that's going to be disappearing soon. So the five,
So
or sorry,
six
six,
volumes, huh?
yeah, six
Yeah.
volumes. The first was titled The Dying God, and it talks about the origins of the mysteries. He gets into, in the second volume, the Grand Lodge. The third volume, titled Synarchy, which we talked about while I was covering the show. It was one of the first episodes I did. Synarchy is the opposite, the anonym of anarchy. So
Right.
it's their enlightened control behind the scenes by the illuminated elite. That's Synarchy. The volume 4 is Mind Control. Volume 5 is The New Age, with the final volume 6 being The Third Temple, which brings us to pretty much today. Those are newer. Those are really good works. These two right here are written by a couple, James and Pamela Noblitt. I think that's how you say
Mm-hmm.
their name. They're clinical researchers
Mm-hmm.
providing psychiatric and anthropological validation of severe ritual abuse and mind control programming. There's plenty of other authors. I've put links down there for all of that. But they authored two texts titled Cult and Ritual Abuse. One is History, Anthropology, Recent Discoveries. The other text is titled Narratives, Evidence, and Healing Approaches. And so these are really well done books. Their experience is very broad, and I really think that in dealing with this subject in particular, people who have worked with a lot of survivors are the people who have the best information. There's no other people who have the best information because this is not even barely recognized. You are hard pressed to find somebody who will give you basic decency and believe you and listen
Mm-hmm.
to what you have to say. So I really do find these to be invaluable works.
Right. And the
Uh,
hardest part about gathering evidence is you can't just take one person's word for it, right? That's the
mhm.
hardest part about finding sources. And we're going to learn soon about where all of these sources of this originated and where all of these guys will actually quote their sources, and you're going to find it's more crazy than you could ever imagine. But with those with what they're trying to achieve is they're trying to find the truth, but yet the sources are actually key. And people have been quoting those sources, and the story continues to go and continues to remain in what would be considered truth. However, when we get into my sources, we're going to go back to the 1700s and find out that this this story just continues to come out, and we want to know why. Go ahead, Urban.
Yeah, so the next author that I found to be very interesting is Michael Hoffman II. Hoffman's extensive research into Talmudic orthodoxy and the occult renaissance, and along with the weaponization of usury, provides a massive data cluster for the spiritual and societal vectors of the matrix. Quoting here, Michael A. Hoffman II is an independent scholar, a former reporter for the New York Bureau of the Associated Press, and the author of 10 books of radical history, journalism, and literature. He studied political science and history under Faiz Abu Jabbar at the State University of New York at Oswego. He investigates political and occult crime by decoding what he calls Twilight language, and that's from his Goodreads section there.
Okay, so one thing that's important to understand is on when it comes to the third dimension, evidence is hard to find when it comes to secret societies. And a lot of these authors came to a conclusion, not all, but a lot, came to a conclusion that it's a spiritual thing within civilization. And the only way that we can describe the reasoning behind all of the crap that's going on in the world, well, it's easy to point fingers at just one institution, one religious group, one certain, underground secret society that's causing all of these problems. And what we're going to find out tonight, that that's actually just not the truth.
Yeah, it's and unfortunately what happens is only by going down this path and kind of just finding all of this stuff, you start to see these patterns. You start to understand that it seems like these people are all seeing the same general structure. You have the same form here. Now, some people are looking at it from this side, or some people are looking at it from over here, but you have the same form over hundreds of years, and it almost fits with a lot of the mythology around the world. And so I'm just tempted to say that there's more than a nugget of truth here. Now, there's definitely some false information, and that's a topic possibly for another show, but I'm beyond convinced, because I've gone through hundreds of different sources, more than we could ever cover in one night. So Michael Hoffman II, he's got a lot of great sources. One of my favorites is Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. That one's a really interesting book. It's about how almost this type of insanity or delusional, almost
Chaos.
schizophrenia, what they use, that chaos in the population, and induce people into insanity, basically, to control them
For their breath.
Absolutely. Another text that he wrote, Usury in Christendom, the mortal sin that was and now is not. And so he goes into usury. He goes into even white people and the slave trade, which is a very hushed up part of history. Talks about the occult Renaissance Church of Rome, the Catholic Church. King Kill 33 is about the occult symbology behind the Kennedy assassination. And then he does 2 books on Judaism and the laws of the Talmudic Orthodox stuff. So those are Judaism Discovered and Judaism Strange Gods. And those are pretty big books. So he's a great source to check out. And I think this is the last one I have, Avro Manhattan. Now, this guy has written a lot, pretty much everything on the Vatican and the Jesuits and that aspect. So I will read. Avro Manhattan's most prominent work on Vatican politics is titled The Vatican and World Politics, published in 1949 by Gayer Associates. Spanning 444 pages, the book critiques the Holy See's diplomatic strategies, ideological positions, and influence in global affairs, particularly during and after World War II, drawing on papal encyclicals, concordats, and historical precedents to argue for the Vatican's role as a supranational power intervening in secular politics, dedicated to truth seekers, irrespective of creed It reflects its initial reception among audiences interested in ecclesiastical geopolitics. And that was from his page on Rockopedia.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has written some great books. Now, these are very hard to find, they've been disappeared well. One is The Vatican Billions, what happened to all the money that they've amassed, The Dollar and the Vatican. He did one called Catholic Terror in Ireland, Vatican Imperialism in the 20th Century, the Vatican Moscow Washington Alliance, the Vatican's Holocaust. In Croatia, he did one on Vietnam. That's not pictured here. The Vatican, World Politics, and Catholic Power Today. And most of those are in the Google Drive there. So please check those out. Now, this is the end of the section that I put together. Those are just skimming the top of the sources that I've used. I mean, that really doesn't even begin to go into it. But those right there are a solid chunk that if anybody were to look into those authors and those sources, you would be very oriented to research some more.
Yeah, all of that stuff, all of those books, all of those authors will help you understand all of the information that they gathered from their sources and what they think is going on, either physically or spiritually. And so all of these are absolutely important and key to understanding the whole genre of secret societies and what's going on behind the scenes. Now, we're none of us are given access to any of this because we're not bloodline. We're not the family, right? So we're not going to get all of the stuff that these people, these organizations, these institutions do behind the scenes because we're not invited. But all of these authors are trying to give their best guess as
Mm-hmm.
to what's really going on. And their sources that they quote, which when we go through mine, you're going to start to find that they're quoting the older sources. And what we're going to get to the bottom of is where did the beginning of this idea of a secret society cabal controlling the world come from?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I think I've tried to go into that a little bit, but I think it's honestly as old as time. I've come to the conclusion that this is a very old idea because you look at the text occult theocracy, it's just a kind of a repeat. Even these secret societies would pop up in different areas, but they would use the same symbols. The son of a widow, which is a Freemasonic saying, but that
Mhm.
is Egyptian. That pops up in multiple other secret societies through time, and so it seems like this is almost something that just keeps repeating over time. Go
Right.
ahead.
And the good thing about artificial intelligence, folks, is that we can take all of these books, we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of books, and we can put it into AI and start searching for the bottom line. What are they trying to achieve? What do they want? And what we've learned throughout the course of a few years is they want to control us, and that's an obvious one. But the deeper meaning is they want our energy. They want our breath. They want our loosh. They, for some reason, believe in their philosophy or in their science, literally, because most of these people, their religion is science. And I'm talking about the elite. They are pulling our energy to feed themselves and the gods that they worship, which is science. And so that's something we're going to be learning a little bit later on too as well. Hey, Urban, did you put any of mine in a PowerPoint, or I'm just going to read them out loud?
I have the lists of them. I don't have the screenshots of them, and I
Okay.
have these two guys at the
Okay.
beginning.
Great. So you want me to go ahead and start with that?
Yeah, go ahead. I
So
can do whatever you need.
Israel. Okay. So Israel Zeus. Well, okay. Take a step back. Santos Bonacci. When I started to go through YouTube's years ago, trying to find information about cabals, hidden secret societies. Where did they come from? Why did they start? I ran into this Santos Bonacci. I think that's how it's pronounced. And Santos said in one of his lectures, and trust me, there's hardly any books by a few of these people that I found. he has one book, and his one book doesn't really detail anything much about the secret societies, but his book is more about quantum physics and how we are we're living in a 3D source, a virtual reality, and he focuses also a lot on Egyptian magic and how they use all of that to control the people. And as I was listening to him, watching him during this seminar, he turns around and he says, this one dynasty controls the world, and he said it's the Orsinis. And I've never even heard of the Orsinis. And I'm like, okay, so that gave me the idea to start looking for it, because after reading Fritz Springmeier and the 13 Illuminated families, I found out that those are not the real ones who have the money. They're what's called new money. There's an actual group of dynasties that are above them in Europe called the 13 Black Nobilities. And those Black Nobilities came all from 4 dynasties in Austria, and they all married into, and it over the few hundred years became 13. But as I was researching Orsini, I found this gentleman by the name of Domenico Napoleone Orsini, and all of these rumors about him being the, quote, Gray Pope. And so I started researching Gray Pope, and then I didn't know there was a Gray Pope. Okay, is there? Well, let's find out. As I was researching, I found out that there's a Black Pope, there's a White Pope, and then there's this Orsini guy. Well, he's somehow on the council, the highest council of the Jesuit order. And as I was researching that, I run into this guy named Israel Zeus. Now, there's nothing really on him. This last post that he did, he vanished since probably his last post was like, what does that say? 2019 or
2018.
2018. And after that, he goes cold. Israel Zeus on his blog spot started just exposing just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures and information on certain families. And I went through all of his research, and I found through his work the 13 Black nobility families, and I started writing about them and doing more research. And Israel reached out to me about I would say 6 months ago, and he asked that I put his sources on my stuff, because what I was doing was I was so excited about finding all of this stuff about the Black nobility. I was putting all of his stuff on my website, and so I put some of his links at the bottom, but not all. And he just wanted me to put it on top, so I did. So I put his source on top, and nobody knows anything about this guy. We don't know his real name. That's the only picture you can find, and to dig and find out who this guy is, it's almost impossible. But nobody uses him as a reference, but he is the one I wanted to point out how I got into the 13 Black nobility, because according to this guy, they are above the 13 Illuminated family. And the Illuminati is the new money, the Black nobility is old money. So that's where we went there from those sources. Do you have another slide?
And then there's a big list of what you sent me. It's in the same order, but if you need me to pull any graphics up, I can.
No need. So in researching the Black nobility, these are along with some of our viewers who sent me information and research links to go find certain types of sources. Okay, because Israel, Santos, and all of the sources prior that Urban has been showing you, they are all quoting these sources from the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. One of them is Augustin Barruel. I think it's Barruel, and his memoirs illustrating the history of Jacobism.
I've got that one. I know about that one. That's a good book.
Okay, so he relied on revolutionary pamphlets. Okay, these are propaganda pamphlets that were being sent during the French Revolution. And he also relied on Enlightenment writings through Alice Bailey, Helena Blavatsky, and other Enlightenment areas. Okay, and he also used the Christian Church interpretation, and he concluded coordinated subversion by linking ideological similarities across texts without direct operational records. But a lot of people quote Barruel, and he says this guy has the evidence, but there's the evidence that he has as far as sources are concerned are just pamphlets, revolutionary pamphlets, and information that he got from the Enlightenment Church and the Roman Catholic Church interpretation, but nothing concrete saying this is the book that I read. Nothing concrete saying this is a source. It's just all speculation. Then comes Hilaire. Well, actually,
John Robison.
Yeah, John Robison. I'm sorry, I have these all alphabetical.
Oh,
So yeah, on my notes. So Robison, pull it up here.
those were written about the same time. I was going to say when I pulled those two texts when I was looking into them myself, those it seemed like they were written almost like by people who kind of were collaborating. So I was almost of the opinion that these two people were doing the research together in a way.
No, they don't. None of them knew none of them knew each other.
Really?
That's my information says. Now, John Robison, he wrote a book called Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe. This was in 1797, and he relied on his membership lists that he found, memberships of secret societies, etc. Stuff like we found for the Bohemian Grove list, or stuff that we found through the Epstein lists. Okay, he relied on things like that back then. All right. And he also relied on correspondence and a personal experience he had with Freemasonry. And thus he based his conclusions on linking networks and ideology, but he had no proof. And John would often reference others like who was it? Where is it? Others in the 1700s who basically came to the same conclusion, but none of them actually had real proof. So next is Nicholas Duchamp. So Nicholas wrote a book called Secret Societies in Society in 1882, and he used Masonic writings, church sources, and Barruel's work. Okay, so he's relying on Barruel, and Barruel had no full real sources, just a hunch and a bunch of pamphlets and information from the church, but he's looking at it from from a point of view of a guess, really. And when people start quoting Barruel, and he's one of the main sources that people quote, Barruel didn't have evidence. He only had flyers, and the flyers didn't say, this is the secret society order number, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
I was going to say, I feel like one thing that I missed that I wish I would have done in hindsight on this is a lot of like Masonic text and theosophy and their doctrines of these actually of these groups. I wish I would have put more about that on there, but that has been also very influential, is just looking at Masonic encyclopedias, looking at reference works. And so I wonder, I mean, perhaps that was a bit of something they were relying on, but I'm unsure either way. That's what I've used.
Right, but they did not rely on the court documents. They didn't rely on arrest warrants. They didn't rely on any of that stuff. And that's the stuff we need to look for. You see, all of these whistleblowers and people who have testimonies, they need to file a police report if they were, sexually abused through a satanic ritual. These are the things we need to look at as far as what I call evidence. And what we've learned from Duchamp with Nicholas in his book, Secret Societies and Society, he used the Masonic writings. He, like what we found, Albert Pike and all of those books, Morals and Dogma. He used church sources, and he, again, like the other one, used Barruel's work and came to a conclusion formed by connecting ideological themes across institutions, but he had no evidence. Next is J.H. Cantalou. And Cantalou, let me pull that up. Please be patient with me. There it is. So Cantalou wrote a book called Political and Religious Sects and Secret Societies in 1863, and he compiled descriptions of secret societies using publicly available records and prior authors in his sources. And his conclusions, again, were based on pattern recognition rather than actual internal evidence. Okay. Next is Henry Delassus. And Henry Delassus wrote a book called The Problem of the Present Hour in 1904, and another book called The Anti-Christian Conspiracy in 1910. And he drew from Catholic theology, earlier conspiracy writers like Barruel, and political events. And his conclusions were framed as a spiritual opposition to Christianity rather than documented coordination. So he didn't find sources. Now, guys, keep in mind, all of the great books that Urban was showing you, all of the authors that are being quoted now, were quoting these guys. This is key to understanding what we're talking about. Now, you can say that secret societies don't exist, or you can say that they exist. The problem is finding the evidence and the proof that they do or do not. And this is what we're going to. We're going to the actual real sources that all the people that Urban and his books are quoting. And I'm going to tell you each one of what sources that they're quoting. Next is Dillon, George F. Dillon. And Dillon, or Emile Joseph, wrote a book called The Inside Story of the Peace Conference in 1920. He relied on diplomatic records that he found and firsthand reportings. He came to conclusions based on observed political negotiation, but not on secret societies. So he was looking at banks, he was looking at institutions, he was looking at religious churches, etc. He came to a conclusion, but he had no sources. Next was Nesta Webster, which we've already talked about, The Plot Against Civilization, which this is one of the origins, and it's good that Urban brought Webster up first.
I
Because
was going to say, now that you say that, there's Avro Manhattan, Nesta Webster. They were also in a bit of the elite class, so perhaps you could say that. And I know that somebody in the audience is saying Carol Quigley. That is a fair source, and we've definitely looked at those. It was just not one that made it into the slideshow for whatever
Quigley's
reason. There's no
work,
reason, just because it was one that I didn't include, but that's a fair source.
right? And Quigley's work, if you go to Quigley's sources, these are going to be her Carol's. I think Carol's a guy. Sources. Now, Nesta Webster wrote the book World Revolution and the Plot Against Civilization. She, Nesta, I think it was a she, used Barruel, Robison, and revolutionary documents and pamphlets. Conclusions that she formed were through comparative historical interpretation rather than any new evidence. So we can't just go to Nesta and say, "Yep, everything that she said is true." There's evidence because she didn't have any. And next is Leon Ponchins or Ponsens or Ponsens. I really don't know how to pronounce that. De Leon is his name. He wrote a book called The Secret Powers Behind Revolution in 1929 and compiled earlier works in contemporary political developments. And he drew the conclusions that were extended prior narratives without any new primary evidence. Next, we move on to Henry Ford. Guys, this is the biggie. Okay, this is where people go nuts. If you understand Henry Ford, then you should understand, if you've done any work on Henry Ford, that Henry Ford paid money to the Nazi Party. He was in favor of what the Nazis were doing. And Henry Ford had would be considered like the first magazine back then. And he called it The International Jew, and it ran for only 2 years. And in Henry Ford's writing, he compiled secondary sources, newspaper articles, and earlier polemics. And his conclusions derived from aggregation rather than an actual primary archival discovery. And Henry Ford was quoting Barruel. And so because his name Henry Ford was in there, this is where the trail stops and nobody goes and looks behind Henry Ford, because here's what he did. He printed propaganda. he printed information saying that all of these other authors like Barruel, Robison, Deschamps, and Cantalou, and all of them, that they all had sources. So if he printed it, and he's a wealthy industrialist, then it has to be true. And that's where we come into an issue as a society when it comes to us doing our homework. If we just rely on Henry Ford's words, then we're going to run into trouble. And this is where I ran into it, because all of the evidence of the prior people since the French Revolution who have been writing about secret societies, Jacobinism. Yeah, we're going to
There's
be
a
talking about that,
reason.
Philip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't read the bottom one. What's behind? What's
Yeah.
underneath Henry
Here,
Ford?
let me do this really quick and make it smaller so people
Yeah,
can
I
see.
think it is important to go through these. But yeah.
I know that people can't see it, but there's going to be a link whenever if you're on YouTube, Rumble, any of those. The only one that doesn't have it is Substack, because there's no description on the video yet. But
Yeah. All good.
everywhere this
Okay.
video is, you can view all these.
Yeah. Let's move on to
So right here.
George Popoff. George Popoff. He wrote a book called the Cheka, spelled Tcheka, The Red Inquisition in 1925, and he used eyewitness accounts, refugee reports, and early intelligence sources, and came to conclusions focused on documentation institutions like the Cheka and what happened then. So Popoff is quoted a lot by some of the later works, especially the people like I believe it was William Cooper, and working off his works. But his works came from intelligence sources. Well, do we know that can we consider that a source? Can we consider that evidence? My whole point is, can we take this information to court and prove that whatever sources that Popoff has and the information he has, will it hold up in court? It will not. He focused his conclusion based on just documents of institutions, intelligence sources, and refugee reports and eyewitness accounts. But that doesn't mean that what he's pulled together is true. And he also, again, quotes Barruel. Next is George Pitt. Was it Pitt Rivers? I think it is Pitt Rivers.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. All right. So George wrote a book called The World Significance of the Russian Revolution and a few more. And he used news reports, political writings, and earlier authors. And he basically formed his conclusions by linking global events interpretively. So he looked at it from a data point of view and saying, naturally, what's going on are secret societies and bloodlines and oaths and all of that. But he did not provide any proof whatsoever. Who's next after Pitt? Gustav Gotherot.
Yes.
I think it's Gotherot. Would you quote Gotherot?
Yeah, Gotherot.
Okay, so Gustav wrote a book called The Communist World in the 20th Century, and he analyzed communist movements using political writings and historical observations. He came to the conclusion that was centered on an ideology and structure, but he had no sources to back it up. He was quoting all of the others, Barruel, etc. And next under Gustav, is that it?
Yeah, then the next page begins.
Yeah, just
here.
hit the, there we go.
Sombart.
So Werner Sombart. He wrote a book called The Jews and the Modern The Jews and Modern Capitalism in 1911. And also the Jews and Economics in 1924. He relied on economic history. Okay, so he's looking at business reports. He's looking at institution information. He's looking at trade records, and he looked at the sociological data of it. And he came to the conclusion based on structural and analytical data, and he would be quoting the other sources as well. So if he's quoting Barruel, if he's quoting Ford, if he's quoting he wouldn't be quoting Ford because he was before Ford, but these are the ones that Ford were quoting. Does that make sense? So these guys had no evidence to back up what they're saying. They had eyewitness accounts, they had pamphlets, they had books, but all that stuff had no true sources and evidence that can point a finger to a one world religion, one world government, new world order. Next is Hilaire Belloc. Hilaire Belloc, which I think Hilaire is a gentleman, and he wrote The Jews in 1922, a book called The Jews. And he also wrote a book in 1912 called The Servile State. And he used historical and economic observations of European society. And he came to conclusions that were drawn from structural analysis of finance and minority roles, but not on secret documentation. So he didn't write anything based on Barruel and some of the earlier works from the French Revolution, but rather focusing on what he can find through data structures. Does that make sense? Now, next is Karl Marx. Everyone, if you've been following secret societies, I'm sure you understand who Karl Marx is. He's written several books. And one of the books that he wrote is called On the Jewish Question in 1844. And he relied on philosophical argument, political theory, and critique of religion. And his conclusions came to theoretical but not conspiratorial. He didn't mention anything about Freemasonry. He didn't mention anything about the prior authors of the 17th century. All he did was came to his own political, philosophical argument through what he would consider political theory and critique of religion, because he wasn't interested in the Vatican. He was not interested in any religion that would control people. He was more interested in the religion that he believed in. So Karl Marx did a lot of work to help form socialism and communism. And a lot of people quote Karl Marx as a genius who came up with communism, but he's not the one who came up with it. He just regurgitated from others. Mm-hmm. So that's one book that focuses on a conspiracy, but there is no evidence. And you'd think there would be if it would be from Karl Marx. Are there any others?
That's the last one here. We'll go to religious, theological, polemical works.
Got it. Okay, so I believe it's Massa Guggenot, and Massa Guggenot, I have it right here, wrote a book called Judaism and the Judaization of Christian Peoples in 1869. Massa relied on religious texts, what he found through the Bible and the Talmud, theological interpretations, and earlier Catholic critiques. The critiques would be things that the Vatican will put out and saying, this is what we interpret from the Old and New Testaments. And he came to the conclusion formed through a doctrinal lens, and he was not quoting any others, but more or less thinking on a religious point of view, on a spiritual point of view. Massa, what he saw was the spiritual connection versus the physical, but he had no evidence to back it up. All of his stuff was based on just his opinion. Next, we have August Rolling. Is it August? Yeah, August Rolling. So. Yeah, so August Rolling. And dude, there's so much more about these guys, but I'm covering a lot of books here. So anyway, he wrote a book called The Talmudic Jew, late 19th century, 1870s, 1880s, and it used selected translations of religious texts, and he came to the conclusion formed through a theological interpretation, meaning these secret societies are worshiping the devil, they're underground, they have all the money, and he's saying this is biblical. So he came, and by reading the Talmud and reading other, Zoroastrian texts and other religions, etc., that the natural progression of society is a spiritual one. When society leaves God, then witches come. So when we're not worshiping God and we're giving him the glory, then the witches come, and he came to that conclusion. Next is Ernest Jowin. I think it's Jowin. I don't want to say Jewin. I think it's Jowin. So Ernest wrote a book called The Judeo-Masonic Peril in 1932, and he relied on earlier conspiracy literature. Okay, he was the one quoting all the other ones, Barruel and et cetera, and also used contemporary political concerns, basically newspapers, et cetera. And he came to conclusions that were synthesized by existing narratives. So he brought back the narratives, right, from Barruel, and unfortunately, we can't say that his sources are accurate because his sources are not. There's just no proof or evidence to back up his claims. Next is Theodore Fritsch. I don't know. How would you pronounce that, pal?
Fritsch or Frisch. Could be either.
Right. So Fritsch or Theodore wrote a book called Handbook on the Jewish Question. Okay, early 20th century, multiple editions, 1900s to 1920s. He assembled claims and statistics from earlier writers, the earlier writers we've been talking about. Conclusions that were based on compilation, but he did not offer any original documentation to prove his points. He just came to his theory. William Marr, I believe it's Marr. And William Marr wrote a book called The Victory of Judaism over Germanism in 1879 and based his conclusions on social and economic observations of 19th century Europe. And his conclusions and were ideological rather than evidentiary. So he didn't bring any evidence. He looked at from a bird's eye view and came to his own conclusion. And that's not evidence. Next is we already did Wilhelm Marr.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I
Rosenberg. Here,
yeah, Rosenberg. Alfred Rosenberg. Okay, so Alfred wrote a book called Anti-State Zionism, 1938, and one that's really hard to find, Pest and Rustland, 1938. He used earlier ideological writings and political propaganda, and his conclusions were aligned with state-driven narratives. You guys are saying, why are you going through all of this stuff? Because I'm trying to show you guys what propaganda is. I'm trying to show you where propaganda starts. I'm trying to show you where rumors happen, and then when we get to recent people who are quoting older works from the 1700s, the evidence doesn't support, or there is no breadcrumbs that lead to a cabal or a Jewish underground Ashkenazi secret society that's ruling the world. What we're seeing is a bunch of authors who could have been paid to write these things to give us this impression. So keep that in mind as we continue. We should be done here shortly. Is that it?
Rosenberg was the last one on that page.
Okay, next page.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to understand what was going on in Europe during these times. Okay, Europe was fighting each other. I believe that was it, wasn't it? No, it's not. Okay, so Theodore Herzl we just talked about, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So Ludwig.
Did you?
Theodore Herzl. Well, let's do it again. It sounds familiar. Okay, yeah. He wrote The Jewish State. Yeah, based on political analysis, journalism, and contemporary European conditions. But Theodore drew his conclusions openly and proposed that it was basically it was publicly debated. But he did his through a political analysis of books he wrote and newspapers he read. And he, again, was quoting Barruel and all of the other ones in the past, which we cannot rely on, unfortunately. Next is Edmund Flegg. Yeah, Flegg. Now, doesn't mean these guys are wrong, guys. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if I'm going to be a Christian, I'm going to tell you the truth, what I can find through data. I'm not going to say, well, this is what it is, but because we can't.
The whole thing is, but I mean, the reason that I'm not following along with the question, is because all of these they all agree that something is going on here. Like there's something going on here, but we are trying to say that we saw this part over here because we lived in France during the French Revolution, and then some other writer
saw it in Russia and other places, right?
And so everybody's sharing their collective viewpoint of this seemingly, and I think I have personally seen enough to say that all of these people, barring a couple, obviously, possibly, but most of these people are seeing the exact same thing. just from different angles.
Right, but would the same thing continue throughout all history and be the same structure? That's not how chaos works. That's not how the world works. Right? Because they're all arguing that it's the same group of people, the same families over and over and over being regurgitated into new names. And there's no evidence that supports that. Their evidence is flyers, um, and newspapers, which we all know you can't trust the news,
James knew
right?
about Carol Quigley. We just literally didn't put it in the presentation because it didn't make it into the presentation. But yeah, we've known who Carol Quigley is.
Yeah. So, did you want to quote Carol Quigley?
Well,
Is
I
that what you
have
were
a
saying?
well, somebody in the audience asked about Carol Quigley, and so I guess they said that James didn't know it, and I was saying back, James did know who Carol Quigley is.
Yeah, yeah. I just didn't. I on my stuff. I didn't need to mention Carol Quigley because Carol Quigley was quoting all of the stuff that I'm showing you guys right now. So what I'm saying is Carol Quigley believed Henry Ford, and Henry Ford was lying. I don't know whether to sell cars or what the whole propaganda machine was, but he was writing propaganda, and that's been proven. And so Quigley and all of Quigley's work, Quigley's going to quote all of these: Dylan, Gothrod, Guggenot, Guénon. We haven't even gotten to Rene Guénon yet, but Carol Quigley was quoting Rene Guénon, but we'll get there in a second. So yeah, way ahead of you guys. So next is who is it? Edmund Flagg?
No,
No,
you did. I think you did flag already. Now
all
it's
right,
Lewisham.
Ludwig Lewison.
Yes.
No, we didn't. We were getting ready to do Edmund Flagg. No, Edmund Flagg wrote a book called Why I Am a Jew in 1945. And he based it on his own personal identity, his cultural history, and religious reflection, but he had no claims of political coordination. And basically, he was saying through just from a religious point of view that there's always a secret society underground that is trying to control the world. Next is Adolf Jelinek. Jelinek?
Yes.
Yeah, Jelinek. Okay, so Jelinek wrote a book called Studies and Sketches in 1869, and he used Hebrew texts, religious scholarship, and historical studies, and his conclusions were academic and theological. Now, if you quote Jelinek, then you have more of a base to stand on, but all of the others besides Adolf, I wouldn't use as real sources because he was looking at it from a non-religious point of view, just an outside observer, what he's seeing. But he still had no proof that there's a secret society running the world, especially the Jews. Next is Asher Ginsburg, also known as
Yes.
Ahad Ha'am.
Yes.
Ahad Ha'am. So Ahad, I have it right here. So Asher Ginsburg wrote a bunch of essays and introductions in the late 19th and 20th century. Not books, but it's just a bunch of essays and introductions. And he based all of his works on the Hebrew literature, cultural philosophy, and internal Jewish intellectual tradition, meaning based on what he was learning from rabbis, etc., what they were telling him. Okay. And he formed his opinions through cultural analysis and philosophical reflections rather than any political or organizational evidence. So what he's saying, Asher Ginsburg or Ahad Ha'am is saying, trust me, bro. Okay, I can't. That's my problem. Okay, I want to say, hey, all of these people are real. All these people had, eyewitnesses, but none of them had any actual evidence. And guys, we're going to come into the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, and I will show to you that was not the truth as well. So, and it sucks. I know people hate hearing this. Next is Rene Guénon. Now,
Yes.
Guénon is quoted a lot. Renee wrote many books: The Crisis of the Modern World in 27, The Reign of Quantity and the Signs of the Times in 45, The King of the World in 1927, The Esotericism of Dante in 1925, and The Multiple States of Being in 1932. Also, Theosophy, The History of a Pseudo-Religion, 1921, and The Veil of Isis in 1922. And Renee, I believe it's a gentleman, used comparative religion, metaphysical texts, and philosophical traditions, and came to conclusions that were focused on spiritual decline and not political conspiracy. Now, I lean towards Rene Guénon than I lean towards any of those other sources. Okay, and my reasoning is this: yes, there are secret societies. Yes, they could be controlling many regions, if not just a few regions, if not all together, but just one or two. However, it's a spiritual thing that happens. It's not a point fingers at the witches of Salem, or pointing fingers at the Ashkenazis of Persia, or pointing fingers at, the current Kazakhstan movement in Astana, where the New World Order is going to be. Renee says, look, it's spiritual. What happens when society leaves God and they put their focus into Baal, Moloch, and these other gods versus just worshiping God or Jesus Christ, etc. So Renee would be a good source, but Renee's sources of the secret societies and all of that information did not have sources, just did not have conclusions. And Renee would quote others, but would not state that those sources were valid. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I would take Renee and Renee's information, and I would lean towards that as something that I would use for not proof, but go in that direction and start seeking more of the truth. Now, next is the Edward.
Plantagenet.
Edward Plantagenet. Edward wrote a book called Initiatory Talks in the 20th century, between the 30s and 50s. And Edward relied on internal Masonic teachings, because he was a member, and symbolic instruction, and came to the conclusions of a philosophical, but he said it wasn't political. So I would lean towards him because he was part of the secret societies, and he went through the initiations, etc. And he said, this is a spiritual battle. It's not a material thing. You can't point it to just one, as he's saying they're all working together, but they're not all getting the same piece of paper every day or pamphlet every day on what to do from, the Lees or the Orsinis or the Breakspears or, So next is Andre Levy. Andre Levy. Is it Levy? Okay. So Levy wrote a book called The Initiation of, I don't know this word, I've never heard of it before, but Vercingetorix. It's an early 20th century work from the 20s. He drew from mythology and initiation traditions, Masonic, etc., and historical symbolism, and came to conclusions based on a philosophical and symbolic. I would lean towards Andre's work versus Barruel, for example. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, guys, you could take all this information and go find this out for yourself, okay? I'm not saying I have all the answers, and neither is Urban. I'm saying these are all the people that are being quoted.
The beginning of this slideshow, there's a few links that I showed everybody at the beginning. Those links have enough books and material to keep you busy for the rest of your life if you want it. So there's so many sources, and if this is something that I think people need at least a solid foundation on. Now, you don't have to spend your life like going into this. Some people are interested in it, some people are not. I get that, but it's coming to a point where I think everybody needs to at least have enough awareness so that they are not getting got. They're not getting, they're not in on the being conned. They're not a victim of the con, a mark.
Right. Do me a favor.
Knowledge is the only way.
I need to interrupt this. One of my users made a point. Watchman00021 basically said, James didn't know Carol Quigley before I told him about it, and said, I'm bearing false witness, and that's a sin. James, you're lying. Well, no, I'm not. If you go look at my website, on March 6th, I wrote an essay about Carol Quigley. So I don't know where you're saying I'm lying. I just didn't add Carol Quigley to it because I didn't think it was pertinent. And you said, yeah, this is the historian who mapped the invisible empire. Go look it up on my website. That was March 6th. So yeah, I did a show about it. I just didn't think it was relevant. I think Carol Quigley was quoting all of the other ones. I'm talking about the actual sources here, not the people on the top. I did a deep dive into the actual origins. So if you want to call me a liar, etc., that's fine. I'm
We
okay
both
with
did
that.
articles
But
on it.
I'm telling you, yeah, sure, you may have brought it up to me. Great. I did a show on it. But when it comes to Carol Quigley, it doesn't feel right in my spirit, so I'm not gonna post it as fact. And here's the thing, Watchmen, all of these books, all of this information that I have found, all of the conclusions that I've come to between all of them is this: none of them have any sources, none of them have any true information that can back up their claims. They're all speculation, and I wish I could find things from that. And you guys go, oh, I've showed you this person, I've showed you that person. Hey, I did the research, I looked them up. I don't see any evidence. None. Nothing is backed up here. So yeah, I'm not going to bring in other people who are quoting the same old stuff in the back. Again, I'm bringing you evidence from the 1700s all the way up to modern day. And I am telling you that they're all quoting each other, and it's a loop of lies. So you call me a liar, that's fine, but Quigley, fine. You can say, oh, that's one of the major pioneers.
They
Go grab that book and or whatever
they all
Quigley's books
are.
and put them all into it. I don't care, but I already had that, and I searched that against my own artificial intelligence, and I didn't think we needed to add Carol Quigley. That's my opinion.
So yeah, so the point is I don't necessarily I'm not necessarily understanding like what the charge was. I mean, this is a different discussion. We both did articles on that author, but yeah, it just didn't make it into the slideshow. And they're all of these authors create almost a way to view the world. This is what they come to believe, or this is what they're going to write about,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a mythology. And every for instance, Carol Quigley himself, who was a professor, a really notable one at a Jesuit school, and so
Mm-hmm.
he was around a lot of very influential, very smart people, and so he comes to see the world in that way, that you would see it through his writings. But I would say it's kind of humanist.
Yeah.
Humanist is the best way to put it. You call it kind of Darwinism now. It's very close. I mean, a humanist and a Darwinist would pretty much be the same thing. um, Pretty
Right.
much
But
material world
I'm
order.
not talking about people from the 80s. I'm talking
Yeah,
about people from the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s.
yeah.
I'm talking about the cause before symptom.
Well, no, I
You know,
just don't
quick.
know what he's even saying. Like, I don't know
Oh, no,
what is
no, no.
his.
He's calling me a liar, bearing false witness, and I am not. I'm telling you that this guy is quoting all of the other people. So I'm not interested in Carol Quigley. I'm not interested in, what was the gentleman that you said earlier with one of the newer pioneers? Remember, he was the young guy in your works. I can't remember his name.
I can't
I'm not
see.
interested in him.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the cause. And the cause is, to be honest, Barruel. That's where it really boils down to. Everyone quotes Barruel, stop digging at Ford, and then move on.
I mean, the issue, if you really want to get into the weeds, the issue is that a lot of the people who are talking and who have apparently somehow garnered these huge followings, they
Mhm.
don't usually even they wouldn't even care to know any about these sources. They don't read, they just watch stuff, and then that's how they know about this stuff, is they watch it from somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
so
what
that's
I'm
the real
saying is
issue.
your Carol Quigleys are going to quote Barruel. I'm not interested in Carol Quigley. I'm not interested in anybody from the late 19th century because I'm trying to get to the cause before symptom. You see, it's my job to point people in the right direction so that they won't be deceived. That's my job. period. And this is what I found. This is what the evidence says. And all of the late 19th centuries, 20th centuries authors are all quoting all of these guys. So there you have it. And I'm really glad that Watchman said that, because I am telling you, Carroll Quigley is not a primary source. Just because Carroll Quigley, wrote Tragedy and Hope and the Anglo-American establishment and weapon systems, political stability. Great, but go look at his sources and then come back to me, right? Because they're
There it is
all
right there.
quoting the same people.
Knowledge is the only
I'm not saying
defense
Carroll Quigley
against
is a
mind
bad
control.
source either, Watchman. I'm saying Carroll Quigley and his sources are.
It's not pertinent to this right now. That's
Yeah.
not what it's
Anyway.
like. We're talking about just what we've seen in general.
Yeah, this guy continues to come on, and we've got an agitator in my family. That's what I have to say. And it just drives me nuts. So, Watchman, that's your third warning. Third. And he's saying you're going against what God commands you to do if you say Carroll Quigley is a bad source. Hey, Urban, you got a good memory. Did I say Carroll Quigley was a bad source?
No, and this is like I don't even know why is God concerned with you and Carroll Quigley? Like, where did that come from?
I
You
don't
didn't
know.
swear on a Bible or anything. We're not swearing like this. That I don't even know where this came from. That's why I'm so confused right now.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring it up. This is coming from my live chat.
Yes.
So anyway, moving on.
Okay, let's see.
Moving on.
I think this might be the last one. We got Dylan.
Last one, Dylan. Okay. Oh, we have more. I thought we were done. Okay, so Dylan, Emil Joseph Dylan, wrote a book called The Inside Story of the Peace Conference in 1920, and he relied on diplomatic records and firsthand reporting, meaning he went out and interviewed people. He came to the conclusions based on observed political negotiations, but not on secret societies. But a really good source, I would lean towards Dylan if I had to quote. Augustin Cochin. And Cochin, where is it? There it is. Wrote a book called The Election Campaign of 1789, and it got released again in 1912. And Augustin analyzed political organization during the French Revolution. He used electoral records and historical documentation, including quoting Barruel, and came to conclusions focused on a structural group behavior, but not on just hidden global control. And next would be, I think it's a Nechvaladov. I don't know.
Yep.
Nechvaladov. I'm not good with pronouncing.
No, that was pretty good.
Wrote a book called Emperor Nicholas II and the Jews, 1924, and used historical accounts of political interpretation of Russia. And his conclusions were tied to the monarchy and social conditions, but didn't have any sources to quote other than Barruel. You get where I'm going with this? And then next is Cohen Cadme, I think it's Cadme Cohen, I think.
Cadme Cohen.
Yeah, Cadme Cohen wrote a book called Nomads, or Nobodies. This is French, and again, a lot of these books are written in French.
Yeah.
Cohen, I think it's under, it's under K. Hang tight. I didn't have these alphabetized with your slide. Sorry. Okay, so in the early 20th century, Cohen Cadme used anthropological and historical observations and came to conclusions that were centered on identity and cultural movement, but not on secret control. I would lean more towards, this person for evidence versus just, hey, it's a secret group of blood baby eaters, right? And then I believe, is that it?
I'm pretty sure it is. Let me make sure. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So, guys, here's the big picture here. Okay, here it is. This is how the rumor started. Okay, and it's okay if Urban doesn't agree with me. Urban's doing his research. I'm doing my research.
Oh, I mean, fundamentally, we've kind of on the same page. I appreciate. I'm of the point where I appreciate the extra viewpoint because now like I said, I fundamentally agree with the reasoning that you've applied to these, especially because this is not a huge window of time. This is in geographical regions. So you said, a lot of these, obviously by the titles, are just French. And
Mhm.
so the same kind of general region around the same 100-year time span, that is not the best sample group, data set,
Mhm.
whatever, but there's still value in going through them like this line item format
Mhm.
and just seeing what they're about, because this is a process. It's not the answer that matters, it's the
Well,
process.
this is what we're giving the audience. This is what we've been working with.
Hmm.
Okay. Someone came onto my show and said, "Where's your proof? Where's your sources?" And I'm like, "Here." And I
you get
start showing them, right? And
you
they're
get
like,
closer.
"That's not good enough." And then I went, "Okay, you know what? You're right. It's not good enough." And so
Yeah.
I really started digging. And what I came to the conclusion of is this, guys. This is how the rumors started. And then we'll go into your slide here in a second. And I love this. But guys, when these writings were placed in sequence, there's a pattern that emerges in how claims moved from observation into assertion, right? The late 18th century authors like Augustin Barruel and John Robison, they were reacting to the shock of the French Revolution, and they sought explanations in the ideas and networks that they could see visibly. Right? Enlightenment writings is all they had. Clubs that they were hanging out in, lodges that they were secret society members of, and political correspondence. And their works all relied heavily on published material and interpretations, but not on hidden archives. And in the 19th century, figures such as Nicolas Deschamps and J.H. Leconteur de Canteloup, which we talked about, repeated and expanded those frameworks, often citing Barruel, as a foundational authority. And by the early 20th century, authors like Nesta Webster and Ponchins and Ernest Wynne, or yeah, Wynne, we're drawing from this accumulated body of literature, frequently referencing earlier writers rather than introducing new primary documentation. So, in parallel, widely circulated texts such as the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, well, all that entered the stream, guys. It entered the stream, and they were treated by some authors, including Henry Ford, as supporting evidence, despite questions about their origin, and that were raised soon after publication, right? So across these generations, the sourcing chain increasingly moved from firsthand documentation to previous authors' interpretation, and they said that's proof, and it's not. And that was creating continuity of narrative without a continuous set of verifiable records tying the claims together, because you can't. And at the same time, other writers like Werner Sombart or Hilaire Belloc or Karl Marx and Rene Guénon, they were all analyzing economics, society, and religion using their own frameworks, but their work was sometimes read alongside or folded into the same narrative by later commentators. So, this blending of distinct approaches, political reporting through Emile Dillon, theological critique through Henry Delassus and George Dillon, and sociological analysis through Sombart, and inherited conspiracy literature through Webster and Ponchins. Guys, this all helped reinforce the sense of a single continuous explanation, even when the underlying sources differed in method and evidence. But the result is a layered tradition where names recur, references point backwards to earlier books, and conclusions are often built on chains of citation rather than independently verified records of a unified central coordinating body. That's what I'm trying to get to. And I would love to say, yep, it's all real. And yep, they all went to these secret societies. Yep, they all ate babies. Yep, they all drink adrenochrome. There's no freaking proof. None. I haven't visibly seen it. Have you been to a ritual and seen them eating babies and drinking blood? You haven't, probably. And maybe you've been invited to them. But guys, up until I see it myself, I'm not going to report just based on a hunch or based on what someone told me. And that's what these people did. And they also reported based on analytical data from the top view, from a political point of view and from a religious point of view. And none of that had any real hard evidence or data to back it up. So what I'm saying is they're all quoting the same source, Barruel. And that source has no source. It's an opinion.
Indeed, and see, today where we're at is where it's history is basically repeating itself, because there's an old saying from, I don't know, I can't remember the Roman guy's name, but it goes, kids no longer listen to their parents and everybody's writing a book. And that's, when civilization and the empire starts to collapse, that's what everybody does, is they write a book. And so here we are in 2026, and what happens is the people who will apply the method, for instance, you don't say who is responsible, what is the answer, I need to know the answer, good, bad, that's it. That's not the right question. This is a process. That's what research is. You don't learn about something without doing research. And that's what it's called the trivium method. But originally the trivium was 3 subjects that were taught: grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So this is a brilliant graph. I didn't make it, but this graph shows the 3 steps. Grammar being the first. If you don't know a word, or there's a word that you need information on, I even said this at the beginning of the presentation with the Webster's dictionary, you look the words up, and what you're doing is you're building a data set. The same thing that you would build for like AI, you would build a data set. And you need a data from a variety of eclectic sources. And so these would be the eclectic sources. It doesn't necessarily matter if the information is true or false, but you need some type of control. You need there's no such thing as true or false unless you have both of them. You have to have something to be false if there is going to be defined a truth in that falsehood. And so you have to have a big set of data to do this process with. Now, once you have the data, the who, what, where, when, answer the 5 basic questions, and then you reason through it. You try to draw conclusions. You try to identify patterns. You process it. As it says here, curiosity, doubt, question.
Right.
And the final step is the most important part. You have to teach it to other people, or you engage in a dialogue. Rhetoric is, I guess you could think of it as speaking, but what we're doing now is that 3rd step, is the rhetoric. It's that James and I could sit here and we could just talk back and forth about it, and that would help so much. But what we had to do is we had to go through this process more so to prepare everything and present it, and then we have dialogue, what we've done for the show, and we present it to you guys, and that in part is part of the process for us to learn. This is why when people master a subject, they will usually go and they will become a professor or teacher of some sort. Even if you're learning a trade, you would have the person who was, the guy who had been in it, there's a word, I can't remember what it is, the senior most guy, the master, and then he would train a new apprentice, and that apprentice would become a journeyman, et cetera, et cetera. And there's
and every generation has an author that writes a book that picks up the same garbage that was out and then quotes that garbage, and then here we are again. We're never going to stop the garbage trail. We're never going to stop it unless we come to reasoning, discernment, and proof. And look, guys, I didn't want to come to this fucking conclusion. I was convinced it was a bunch of baby eaters. And what I'm starting to learn from this and realize is that what if, I'm just saying, what if it's just a bunch of non-believing bankers giving us satanic ritual crap so that we go research a bunch of crap, waste our time, and instead instead of petitioning to all the laws that they're passing in every country so that they continue to siphon our wealth. Because what I'm seeing through the evidence shows me is that there is no evidence of a satanic Luciferian occult that's controlling the world currently. And the Bible says that Satan can't have it anymore since Jesus died for our sins. So what we're seeing is a lie. That's what I'm seeing. The data says it. I wish I could say it was real, but it's not. It's not. And dude, I may even look great quoting Barruel, but Barruel had no evidence, no solid evidence. And you know what evidence is, guys? Court cases, police records, bills that were passed to stop things like this. What I'm seeing is a rumor chain or rumor mill of things that to continue to get digested that people will believe in and just stop fighting against the real system, and that's the bankers. If you think, who was the one that Jesus was against this whole time? Didn't hate him, but was definitely upset with them, was so upset that he fashioned 2 whips and went in and kicked them out of the temple, whipping them with the whip. The bankers. The money changers. And you know what the money changers are really good at? Propaganda. And that's what I think what we've been fed is a bunch of shit. And it wouldn't surprise me if Bonacci, Israel Zeus, those are the new icons of the new era, the old Burroughs of the 1700s and the Henry Fords of the 30s, just carrying the same narrative around, getting everybody to be scared about a satanic group of people who want to eat your baby, period.
Yeah, it's all done on, it is banking. The whole thing is banking at the end of the day. We're all
Mammon.
on borrowed time at the end of the day. It's banking because the whole thing is, money is water, it's electricity, and banking is akin to electrical currency, electrical currency, and it flows the same way. And you will find the terms do the same thing. Banks and batteries and dams convert electricity, water into electricity.
Mm-hmm.
All these things are means to an end. So what I have found is that they do those gruesome things, but those are means to an end, in that they're not for instance, the spell. What do they get in return for these rituals? Well, it's to control people in the way that they do it. They do it to keep people in line more than because they like it. And this is what I have begun to hear from listening to so many people tell their experiences, like survivors and stuff like that. They will, bunch of them will say, it seems like they don't do it because they like it, but because when they enforce people to do it in their circle, it forces those people to be undyingly loyal. These are basically coven secret societies, people who come together and swear on pain of death that we will carry this to our graves. That's what it is. If you and I go to war together and we're in a trench together and we almost die together, there's a bond between those people that can't ever be broken, and they only share that amongst themselves. And so it has to become a secret society of sorts because other people don't get it. And so they find people that they share companionship with and who get what it is. And because there's only 2 ways that goes. One, you can do it out of faith and love, and you can lift people up. You can come together out of a fellowship, and you can lift people up out of love, and you can better their lives, and you can watch them improve. Or there's fear as opposed to faith. There's fear, and it takes the role of faith in the negative context, because only faith and fear motivate people to action. Those are somebody told me once, the only 2 real emotions are love and fear. And love and faith and against fear is true. Everything kind of comes under those 2 emotions. And that's what pushes, it's a spirit. It animates you, faith or fear. And so when you can't tell anybody what you're going through, and if you don't follow orders, people you care about are going to get hurt. And if you don't do what we've paid you to do, we will extract the value out of you. And it is all about money. And they say, if I don't do it, somebody else will. And business is just business. And it's ultimately not anything. I mean, some groups do the extra gruesome rituals because they enjoy it, because they're evil people who enjoy watching other people suffer.
Sure,
Because
it's
they don't
real.
feel
They
anything.
do it.
But others are simply Darwinist. The only reason they do it is because I've got a family to feed. And if you're the mark and you're stupid enough to believe it, well, you deserve to get got. And I will step on you because I've got a family to feed.
Yeah,
That's how
and
they.
I'll lie to you with propaganda in order to keep my thing going. And I think that's what's really going on now. I'm not discrediting that
No,
there's
you're not.
some
I know you're not.
chamber. I'm not
No,
discrediting that
I hear what you're talking about.
I'm not even saying that there isn't secret tunnels under the Vatican. I honestly, I don't care. I don't care
Yeah,
anymore. None of this information from all of these people are going to help you.
yeah,
All it's going to do is just put you into fear, and it's not going to bring
it's
you
true.
into peace. This is, I'm starting to realize and learn, this is propaganda to keep us in fear. And as long as we stay in fear, and as long as we don't do our homework, we focus on Satan instead of God. Period. Now, this whole show is about sources and proof tonight. What I can tell you is that there is proof that the entire world is not being controlled by the bankers. And my proof is this: Russia kicked out the International Monetary Fund. Russia does not have an IMF central bank. That's proof and data. Russia does not listen and do what the United Nations says, nor the Bank for International Settlements. Sure, they will meet along with all the others to find out what's going on every 2 months, like what we've been learning through Catherine Austin Fitts for the Bank for International Settlements. All the world leaders meet every 2 months in Basel, Switzerland. Fine. But they're not working together. That's my point. They're fighting each other. They all have maybe the same goal, but that goal is to beat each other out, to gain, and be the top dog. That is what they're doing.
It is.
And in all of the symptoms, the symptoms that fall from just that, the love of money. Here are your symptoms. Writers like Barruel, writers like Henry Ford, writers like Israel Zeus or Santos Bonacci. That's all symptoms.
It's
There's no proof.
insanity at
There's
the
no
end of the day.
source.
They go insane because they do. And what happens is, because they live in a world where you gain the most by stabbing the people you love in the back, because that's how you
Mm-hmm.
make the money, then that
Yeah.
means anybody can do it to you. And so it makes them go crazy. And it is a pit. They have a pit inside of them. They're void. And that is the evil.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
is, I arguably see it as spiritual, but what happens is that it's more banal. The banality of evil was a great theory, because evil is much more banal when you see it. And it's almost like people don't even realize it. It's almost like something's just on top of them, but they just don't even see it. But at the end of the day, when you go and you almost take this bird's eye view and you zoom out, okay, what happened? This guy gives an order at the top of the food chain. How does that play out as it goes down? Well, now, you go a few notches down and the general just said, get something done. And now the village is burning down and a bunch of people are gone and died, kids, children, whatever. And did the guy necessarily know that? Possibly, but he didn't know to some extent how it would get carried out. And that's by design, because he's too weak to
Mm-hmm.
do it eye to eye, because it's easy to sign a death warrant when you don't have to be
Mm-hmm.
there to see it. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I mean by it's banal,
Yeah.
because the killers who kill the most people are politicians who everybody claps for, because they go and they send thousands of people to die in a war. and they kill more people than any serial killer.
Now, I want to leave you with one question that I will answer first, and then you'll answer second, if you could oblige with me.
Sure.
The question to me is, James, where's your proof that there's a secret society controlling the world? I can tell you with all the research I've done for 2 hard years, I have none. Zero. And I can't find any information beyond the French Revolution when it comes to a book written and has sources available and information that we could use and actually go to a press, CNN, and say, look, here's the source. This is real. This is happening. I have none. So I can't, as a pastor, as a lover of my neighbor, cannot with good conscience report on stuff that isn't real, that doesn't have a trail of data and even a breadcrumb to lead to it, other than just eyewitnesses and lie detector tests. None of that is proof. It's still speculation until we see an organization like, let's just say, Epstein, and a company like, I don't know, M&M's, Mars tool, whatever, and they had some sort of human trafficking deal that were going on, and it's not them, and they get taken down completely, and that company just immediately gets bought out. It changes face, and everything is just washed away. That's evidence. I can use that in court. Okay, but if I go into court and prove that there's a secret society and we need to write a law to outlaw them, I ain't got dick. I don't have dick. I got nothing. And what we've seen is we got to quote Barruel. That's just not going to cut it. So I'm telling you guys right now, as a researcher who have been researching for the past 25 years, and what I see before me and all the evidence that I have, and I have evidence, and I'm not going to base it on emotion. I'm going to base it on facts. I can clearly tell you with a humble heart, there is no evidence that the Jews and the Ashkenazi and the Satanist cabal rule the world. Now I wonder what your thoughts are. Do you have evidence?
All I've seen evidence for is that there are a lot of evil people in the world who do evil things and who hurt a lot of people. And some of them know about it, and others, delude themselves into not knowing about it. But there's no tangible, not at least that, is human origin. There's no grand architect sitting behind a desk who just says yay or nay. There's not it's not as formal as people think, and there's more stupidity.
There's lots of it.
There's so much, and that's one of the things that I've always held, kind of to counter it as a counterweight. I look around at the sheer stupidity of the people who are in charge right now, and it's almost like there's no way these people could even make it through a dinner together or an event together. I don't think that these people are meeting to build something like that. I've not seen any proof for a human origin of it.
Right. Like the learned elders of the protocol, learned elders of the Zionists. All of that stuff is propaganda. And I'm starting to think that most of these books have been written as propaganda to get us to focus on the devil instead of focusing on the bankers, because I don't really believe that the bankers believe in the devil anyway. They love money, and they'll do anything to double what they have. I remember watching some documentary about a prince somewhere in the Middle East, and he had, I believe, to the tune of about $600 million and 600 billion. Sorry, 600 billion in worth, right? And the interviewer says, "Well, isn't that enough?" And the look on his face and what he was saying was, he said, "No, it's not enough. I need more." What does he need more for? And I do think because he's going up against the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements. He's going up against the Bank of England. He's going up against London. He's going up against the financial market. And 600 billion is nothing compared to America, who makes $29 trillion a year in goods and services. He needs more to compete against the money changers. And the money changers have used America, and this is documented proof, because we are on a fiat currency. That's documented proof, and have been using America's money to accumulate wealth above all others. And what's going to happen in the future with that, I don't know. But what I do know is when it comes to one group of Jews controlling the entire world, I don't buy it. I don't have the evidence for it. It doesn't make sense. It looks like propaganda to me. And maybe this could all be set up for this anti-Semitism thing, to try to, enrage God so Armageddon can start. I don't know. But I know that I'm humble enough to say I don't have the answers. I'm humble enough to say I have no proof. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's the most important step to the whole thing, because it's in that, being able to assess that, being humble enough to admit that, being humble enough to realize that at the end of such a long tunnel, path, rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it, you still only find out that you don't know anything at the end of the day. You don't, still at the end of the day. But
Right.
I've seen some very spooky stuff, and I've seen a lot that convinces me that this is of an origin so spiritual. It's a spiritual battle more than anything else. I would agree with the writers on the spiritual battle.
I agree.
More so than any temporal, material world organization. Because if any of us are human anymore, it seems like some people aren't human anymore. You realize that people don't get along that well.
Yeah, they don't.
If there's a monetary incentive, you get along with people as long as you're getting a paycheck. And so
you send in your daughter to marry into the other family.
Indeed. And so what happens is,
that's psychotic.
No, how about psychotic? What if we do a research study and we find out that the optimal way to brainwash somebody is to do it under the guise of satanic ritual? And so, okay, just to do the program the best way, we're just going to do this. And it's like we don't actually believe it, but it's just a means to an end because it works.
Yeah.
And so that's it. Like it's insanity. They're all like arguably completely psychotic people.
Yeah. Yeah. And so something changes in you spiritually when you accumulate wealth, and it happened to Solomon, happened to King David. It happened to the best of them. Read 1st and 2nd Kings. You'll learn all about what wealth does to a nation.
Yeah. And these stories are, that's why I'm convinced that these are spiritual matters, because these stories very, they perfectly match Bible prophecy. And dare I say this is the biggest thing that I have learned. For those people who are willing to go and read history, you will find out that history confirms that the Bible is telling the truth. You will find out that prophecy is fulfilled in history and is confirmed by history. But
I agree 100%.
The people that don't read history, well, they don't see. That's where they slip in the easy way, just say it, just watch it, just donate some money. But then you have to have faith in it. But some of us just know because you can see it.
But you just said the easy way.
Yeah.
The easy way is saying, yeah, there's just a bunch of Zionist, Jew, satanic baby eaters running the world. That's the easy way. But that's not the truth. There's no evidence backing that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but no, I really wanted to put that point.
Really, it comes back to what you said, being humble enough to realize that you don't have the one and only truth. That is the answer. I know that it's the answer because if you always are in that mentality and you are always receptive to the knowledge Jesus said that you have to plant each seed and let the tree grow to see what fruit it has.
Right.
Because if you don't know what fruit it has, then maybe it'd be good fruit and you want to keep it, but maybe you don't want that tree. But the point is, literally think of it as a tree. You can't do that unless you let it grow. And so that means you have to be receptive to a knowledge or a new idea. Now, if you think you have the answer and you think you are convinced, oh, I know who it is, so anything other than that's not the right answer, or that person is trying to deceive me. But what happens then is, because you are not receptive to anything new, then the one thing you have to do, to ask for forgiveness. Why would you have to ask for forgiveness if you haven't done anything wrong?
That's what Trump said. He
But
said it.
I know, and the part about it is not anything other than hubris. It's just so hubris. But what if the only thing you need to do to be forgiven, to be free, is to ask for forgiveness? But that means you have to be capable of doing something to be forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
It means you have to have, well, I'm a imperfect person who needs forgiveness because I don't have all the answers. Well,
That's
I don't
that's the
need.
parable of the two men at the steps of the temple. One man says, "Lord, thank you for my family. Thank you for all this stuff. I just thank you. I'm not like this publican over here." And then the story goes to the publican. The publican bashes his chest and, "Lord, forgive me, for I'm a sinner." And Jesus is like, that's the humble one, not the one like, I've got it great, No, dude, get down on your knees and realize that you have no power without the Holy Spirit. You have no power without the blood of Jesus. You have no power without learning who the Father is. And
the
that's where it is.
the sad thing is, like, the one of the worst additions of that is, I already have Jesus, so why would I need anything more? Because that's the trap that I see so many people fall into today. It's like they really turn themselves off because they think that they have and they don't need any more. And
Yeah, yeah. I mean, dude, I could accept Jesus and turn around and make $1 billion and still go out and do evil.
mhm,
But I can't use that as my crutch. I can't use that as my golden ticket into heaven, because all of the things that I have used with the money that was given to me by the Father wasn't my money. What did I do with it? That's going to be the question. Did you help people? Did you, or did you hoard it and try to double it? Did you gamble in Vegas and throw it away? But what really is the bottom line to all this, guys, is our heart. Where is our heart? And all of these people that we've researched, their heart was, hey, it's satanic worship and it's Baal, Moloch, and that's what they really believe. I don't have the evidence, but trust me, bro. Fine. The Bible, honestly, the Bible has all the answers too. If you read the Old Testament, it talks about the Israelites leaving God and worshiping Baal. And Baal is an agricultural god. And Baal was the one who provided the rain, but in exchange, you got to kill your firstborn. In exchange, you got to eat babies. In exchange, you got to drink blood. And that's what they did. And then they found out that, hey, we're not treating each other right. We have to go back to God. And it happens over and over and over and over and over. So what I think, just like what you said, you believe with those authors, this is a spiritual war.
the only
There's it's
context to answer the
it's
question is that.
Yeah, spiritual war. And when it comes to, it's just a group of people, the Committee of 300, the Committee of 30, the Committee of 13, the Committee of 3, the Jesuits. They're not in control. They want to be. But they've still got countries that just won't do what they want. And this is why we're bombing Iran. This is why we're taking advantage of oil in Venezuela that doesn't belong to us. Because there always has to be, it's king of the hill. Remember playing that in school? You had a little mound, and then you would beat each other up to get to the top, so you're the king of the hill. And when anybody come up, you got to kick them You got to push them to stay the king of the hill. Did you ever play that, Urban?
I did, yeah, and Jim.
Okay, that's what's going on. And they want us to go, nope, it's all a bunch of uh, eyes wide shut, robed Satanists in circles doing rituals and spells over the people. Now, I'm not saying that they don't do that. Oh, they do. But that's not the source. That's not the one entity that we can point fingers at, and we have no evidence of that, period. And that's what I'm
So,
saying.
yeah, what I was saying, like when you had talked about the Bible having the answers, the only framework or context that exists that could that we could use to answer this, the answer doesn't lay within anything human. The only way that this can be answered in a conclusive way is in the spiritual framework, the spiritual context. And let me give this just popped into my mind, but there's a special verb tense in the Bible. It's called the prophetic perfect tense. So speaketh, that means will have spoken. So it's almost you referring to something that is guaranteed to happen in such a way that it's already happened. But that's the weird tense that happens. It's you will have already done this. I know what you're going to do. You will do this. That tense. So that's when God, is speaking. He walketh. He will have walked, or he will have moved in that direction. Because when
Mm-hmm.
the Bible talks, yes, you're putting yourself into the narrative as the words go, but these words are not just like it's not just history. This is like every word is so heavy. Like we talked about earlier, the difference between set and make. If you
Mm-hmm.
change that one word, it's so powerful that you get kind of a different meaning to it. But the
Right.
Bible being objectively like absolute truth, almost like a source code, you change that, you're going to get a whole different thing. You're going to
Right.
get a whole different meaning. So that's why the whole thing is set up that way. It's set up because when the human mind tries to comprehend it, somebody in your audience told me this. Um, if you read the Bible and you listen, it will speak back to you. And that's
I
why
agree.
you can read it in the year 1700 for those people who could read. You could read it in the year 1825, 1923, 1976, and every
Mm-hmm.
person who ever reads it will get this unique experience. One you could call it a personal relationship, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody will have that. And because if it was just a history textbook, everybody would read the story the same way. That's
Mm-hmm.
where the error today comes in. Is people just almost it's like this vile, twisted way of viewing it because like they believe it, but they still read it as a history textbook. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then quoting Barruel.
Yeah, it's
Burrow,
like
and
take it
it's just,
literally.
dude, it's a loop. It's a
Yeah.
loop of false information, or a loop of propaganda that has continued to work for 200 years, and I want to put a stop to it. That's how I feel. Now, we really should
I think so
conclude on
too. We
this.
we did
We've
a
been
good
here
shot.
for 2 hours, but guys, here's the bottom line, and I'm going to say my closing, and you can say your closing after,
Okay,
if that's okay, buddy.
go ahead.
When all of these works are laid side by side, which we did tonight, we did it, dude. If it would take us 2 days to go through every one of those books and give you the summaries of it and what they were really trying to accomplish. But when all these works are laid side by side, the final question really becomes unavoidable here. Why would so many authors across so many generations print such sweeping claims without producing verifiable documentations of a single centralized command behind world events? You see, the answer does not require speculation. It sits in the context each of these men lived in. Barruel and Robison, they are quoted almost every from they're quoted all the time. And we found tonight that they have no sources to back them up. But Barruel and Robison were reacting to the collapse of the old order in Europe. You would agree with that?
Hmm.
They were reacting to it. They needed an explanation as to how fast this shit went down. The old system went down overnight. Overnight. And they had no evidence. They had nothing. So they started writing about it and trying to put the best conclusion they could put together, but they had no evidence. Now, Deschamps and Delassus and Dillon, they were defending religious institutions against rising secularism. And Webster, Ponchins, and Ford, they were writing in the shadow of revolution, war, and economic upheaval, because you know what? There's money to be made there. And I believe Ford was quoting all of those other ones, and they all did not have the correct sources. They didn't have anything. And Webster, Ford, shadow revolution, war, economic upheaval, each of them faced a world that appeared to be changing rapidly and at times chaotically, which we were talking about. It's all chaos. And Satan's all about order out of chaos. He is chaos because he's the father of lies. That's all he can do. That's all he can do. He can lie to people and continue to put order his way, but it's an inverted system. It's inverted from the kingdom of heaven. It's upside down. It's backwards, and that's the world we live in and we've always been living in ever since Adam and Eve. Now, in that environment, the method that they shared was not uncovering of hidden archives, but what they uncovered was the interpretation of visible patterns, linking ideas that could explain what they were witnessing. But it wasn't evidence. It wasn't court documentation. It wasn't arrest warrants. They were just interpreting the visible patterns of the times. And the printing press did the rest. The propaganda printing press, boom, 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 started taking all of this, and the rumor had it all over the place. So once an interpretation was written, it becomes a source for the next author who comes in. And over time, repetition gave weight to what had not been independently proven. That's right. We talked about the International Jew. We talked about that author. So this is where the principle of Occam's razor becomes necessary, folks. And welcome, Plasma. Plasma just rated my stream. Have you ever been stream rated? This is a first for me.
No.
Yeah, Duke can take all his people and then come on to our show, and
Yeah, that's great.
brings a bunch more people. But thank you, Plasma, for coming back. Unfortunately, we're at the end of the show, but love you, buddy. So this is where the principle of Occam's razor really becomes necessary. Okay? Not to dismiss the search for truth, but to ground it. I would be a horrible pastor if I would get up there and start spitting conspiracy theories. I'd be a horrible pastor if I told you that aliens exist. I have no evidence of it. In Occam's razor, it just means the simplest explanation tends to be the correct one. And when multiple explanations exist, the most that people actually rely on the fewest unverified assumptions, is the one that stands first. And that's what we found through Barruel, and that's what we found through Robison. The first two that were quoted in the 1700s based on what they saw going on in the French Revolution without any proper paperwork. Thus, over time, repetition gave weight to what had not been independently proven. So this is where the principle of Occam's razor comes. And across all of these texts, we're talking about unverified assumptions. Let me repeat that. We're talking about unverified assumptions. All of these texts and books, what is consistently documented is not a single hidden counsel directing history from the shadows, but a series of observable forces. Political movements, economic shifts, ideological conflicts, religious disagreements, and institutional power structures. That's not the Jews. Does that make sense? It's not the Jews. And the more complex of the claim, that all of these are coordinated by a single concealed authority, that requires evidence that does not appear in the records that these authors themselves provide. And that's what I'm trying to say, guys. I wanted it to be real. I wanted to blame everything on these fake Jews from Europe who are white and not black. Yeah. So the conclusion here, guys, is not that nothing exists. Let me repeat that. It's not that they don't have their secret societies and eat babies and drink blood. That's not the problem. The problem is everyone's basing their research on old documentation that has no verifiable proof that what they're saying exists. So and that's the assumption we're jumping into, and it's bullshit. It's bullshit. And for anyone seeking truth, which is me, because it's in my heart, because I've come to you guys many times with my mistakes, and I repent of it. You guys have seen me on my show over and over and over again making mistakes, and I come back on the next show and I go, I got to tell you guys, I was wrong. That's a heart for the truth. And for anyone seeking truth, that standard does not weaken the pursuit. It should protect it. So what I'm doing is I am exposing the truth. And the truth is there's no documented evidence that a hidden cabal exists that has taken over the world and has taken over the world for the past 200 years. Because again, it doesn't weaken the pursuit. It protects it. Urban?
That's really just a brilliant way to put it. And I think that is a great cap on the show. All of the, if there was any like conclusive evidence, it's probably locked away underneath the Vatican and the secret archives that go on for millions of, like, just like, there's so much stuff in there, but
it's not public.
Yeah, it is so broad. This is something that has existed as old as time, and so there is no central one person pulling the strings. There's no such thing as uniform power. Power in jumper cables has a positive and a negative lead.
Yeah, good point.
It's the best person to put in this candidate seat of in charge is the person who sees that and is able to play the positive and the negative against each other. And I will give you my best evidence for it being the bank in Basel, Switzerland, is that not even the government of Switzerland can enter the bank without permission. So who's in charge? No country in the world can enter that bank, not even a country that it's in without permission of the manager. So money is the god of this world.
Right.
And with that, I think that caps it off.
That's mammoth. Guys, this has been Cause Before Symptom and Urban Odyssey. We really appreciate you being here since 9 o'clock. This has been a very eye-opening thing, not only just for Urban, but for me as well. I really wish that we could find evidence and say, guys, this is it. This is where we are. But if we are to report on the truth, if we report just on rumor, we're not going to get anywhere. We can't use the enemy's tools to fight the enemy. You know, the Bible says, how can Satan cast out Satan? Why would he in the first place? It would hurt his kingdom. So that's what we're trying to work with here. We're just trying to work with the truth and with what evidence we have. And I know this kind of direction for just my show personally, people are going to hate that because everyone is addicted to a car crash and see blood. You're not going to see it here. You're going to start to see just plain Jane stuff that's being used as propaganda in a whole different fashion, just so that we can stop looking at all the bankers hoarding the money, because that's all they care about is hoarding the money, and that's why they crash things and they have control of that. That's more of a better way to go when it comes to research than finding a satanic cabal controlling the world. That's just my opinion. Josh, thank you so much for being here. I love you. You're an awesome guy. Guys, I really do recommend you go check out Urban Odyssey. You can find him on his website, officialurban.com. And on his website, he has everything on there. They could point you to his other links, etc. I believe it is, yeah.
Theofficialurban.substack.com. And that's my Substack. And I'll update all the videos and everything. And guys, I want to say this. If you want to see more of stuff like this, if you want us to do some more stuff together, let us know, because we're kind of trying to judge to see if people like the potential, us doing a show together on a periodic basis. So if there's something that you think that we could do well, or like a show that you would like to see us cover and you think that would be good, please feel free to leave that feedback. We're really eager for that, because we're always looking to find new things to do. It's what keeps us fresh, because you have to pump blood into the effort, to learn. You have to continue to not be in one spot. You have to move.
Thank you. I agree with that 100%. Thank you so much for that. I wouldn't have thought about that. And yeah, guys, if you're interested in this show, if you guys really think that me coming together once a week with Urban and discussing the source, we're kind of playing around with the show names, but if you think that this is something you'd like to see once a week, us coming together and discussing topics, then you let us know. Thank you so much. Guys, this has been Cause Before Symptom and Urban Odyssey. We will see you guys. I'll see you tomorrow, and Urban, you'll see your guys when you see them.
Absolutely. All right.
Be blessed. Love you.
Take care, guys. Good night.